VSiN.com/Bowl Guide. Our VSiN Bowl Guide, $19.99. You order it, it gets delivered right to your inbox. And if you're not a VSiN All Access subscriber, you would get this special issue if you did subscribe. VSiN.com/subscribe. You get a $79 package that includes Point Spread Weekly up through the Super Bowl, plus the VSiN Bowl Guide, of course, and access to all of our live video and replays for 2 months. VSiN.com/Bowl Guide.
Whether you had a good weekend or a bad one, the one thing we all can't wait to find out is what the numbers look like for next week. Well, wait no longer, because we have them for you. Time to close the door on this week, and let's take a look ahead to next on the Opening Line Show.
Welcome to it, 5 o'clock here in Las Vegas. Matt Youmans, Sam Panayotovich. We do this every Sunday at this time. The Opening Line Show. We'll get to John Murray and Dave Tuley in just a moment. What a wild Week 16. A lot of backdoor covers. Buffalo scores their first touchdown with a minute left to go to cover against the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And how about if you had the Jets +3 or +2.5 or +2 or plus anything? You're winning and covering for most of that game, and Aaron Rodgers in overtime throws a game-winning touchdown pass. Packers win by 6.
Well, that's not even the point, really, is that, yeah, of course, it's a tough beat if you had the Jets and the points, but Aaron Rodgers allegedly scored the touchdown with about a minute to go on that fourth down play, and if you watch the replay, the ball never crossed the plane of the goal line, and it was quickly confirmed. It was odd that there was no review. Did you see the replay? Did you ever see the ball touch the plane of the goal line?
I never saw it cross.
I didn't either.
That was very quick, though.
Before the ball was knocked out of his hands before it crossed the plane of the goal line, and the Packers were awarded a touchdown. I was out in the book here in the South Point and a couple other spots around town this afternoon after I got done with my portion of the Green Zone today. There were a lot of people complaining about officiating in the NFL. And that's no different from any other week. I guess if the bad call benefits you and you win your bet, you don't complain that much. But in general, I think a lot of people are just tired of the missed calls and the poor officiating.
You look at another game that also had big implications as far as next week, and we're going to try and make some lines here for Week 17, which is very tough to do because some teams are carrying, some teams are not, some teams are out, some teams still think they have a chance to be in. New Orleans and Pittsburgh, late heroics from Drew Brees, 31-28. Steelers cover, Saints win, and this loss puts Pittsburgh all the way down to the 8th seed in the AFC. So the Ravens are your NFC or your AFC North leaders, 9 and 6. Chargers have the 5, Colts have the 6, Titans 7, Steelers 8.
Yeah, Steelers need to win, and they need the Ravens to lose at home to the Browns next week to get in the playoffs. That was huge because it also secured home field advantage for the Saints in the NFC. The Saints benefited from just a horrendous PI call in that game, too. And,
which one?
Yeah,
there were a couple in that game.
There was one that was a lot worse than the others. But, there were a lot of poor calls in that game as well. Just a strange game between the Saints and the Steelers. And it turns out it's a huge swing game because it could knock the Steelers out of the playoffs and give the Saints home field advantage in the NFC. I think the primetime game next Sunday, I'm not sure this is set yet, but I assume it's going to be Colts-Titans for the right to get that last wild card spot in the AFC. Now, Andrew Luck is 10-0 against the Titans.
Yep.
And the Colts roar back today, beat the Giants 28-27. Giants were 9.5 or 10-point dogs in that game, so a great effort by them, but they find a way to lose it. Colts stay alive in the playoff hunt. It was kind of a wild Sunday in the NFL, it really was.
We haven't even talked about the Bengals cover. They didn't score in the first, they didn't score in the second, they didn't score in the third, but they put up 18 in the fourth quarter, capped off by a 2-point conversion.
And the Browns hit a long pass and had a chance to score a touchdown that would have covered the number, and the tight end was dragged down from behind at the 2-yard line with 1:48 to go, and then the Browns just ran out the clock. That was a wild finish to that one as well.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff. And only one more week in the regular season, Week 17, right around the corner. Matt Youmans, Sam Panayotovich will go down to the Westgate right now. The Superbook is where Dave Tuley and John Murray are standing by. Gentlemen, wild Week 16. Johnny, what was your favorite moment from the Sunday that was?
I was all so exciting, Sam. I don't know. I think it would have to be the Green Bay cover. That was terrific. They gave them a touchdown for some reason at the end of regulation. Mm-hmm. Then the refs marched them down the field in overtime, and they scored a touchdown to cover the spread. It was great.
I really thought you were going to say when the Bengals kicked the field goal down 23-0.
That was good. I'm a little annoyed at that game. I'd played the Browns in the Golden Nugget contest. Apparently, I didn't cover the -8.5. Didn't see the end of it. You guys will have to fill me in on that one.
Yeah, we just talked about that. So let's hit on that Packers game, John. You just made a reference to it. Can you explain how the Packers were awarded a touchdown when Aaron Rodgers puts the ball up over the line? It clearly on the replay did not cross the plane. It was batted out of his hands. Quick review, touchdown confirmed, no debate. What the hell happened there?
The only thing I can think of, Matt, is didn't the Jets want to lose that game? I mean, in a lot of ways, it was the perfect scenario for the Jets. Darnold looked good. They kept their top 3 draft pick. They solidified that Todd Bowles is going to be fired.
Right.
Really, it was a perfect result for the Jets. It was a bad call, obviously.
And
yeah,
Dave, sorry.
I agree. The Jets were better served by losing that game. There's no question. We're talking about the betting result, in this specific case. And when you look at that, it's mind-boggling that Aaron Rodgers was awarded a touchdown on that. When you watch the replay and the camera's right on the goal line, you can tell the ball never crosses. And for some reason, Packers awarded a touchdown there. There were just some bizarre things that happened today.
They were down 15. They're down 15 points in that game.
35-20. Yeah.
They come back and win. Dave, how did the favorites do? How did the dogs do? What about the totals? What's the wrap-up?
For the day, actually, I mean, it really felt like an underdog day, and I had my best week probably the whole season. But the favorites and dogs were actually 5-5-2 against the spread, against the closing numbers on the day. Eagles -2 and Cowboys -7 were the closing consensus lines in town for those two landing on the pushes. But with the two dogs covering on Saturday, dogs 7-5-2 ahead. Unders 8-5-1, including Saturday's games.
Let's look at Week 17, guys. So, Johnny, I've watched you make these look-ahead lines, and we did the Week 17 lines. You did them sitting right next to me, how tough it is to do these lines when you just have no idea. You made these last week for Week 17, and now we look at the board here, and not many numbers on the board. Just explain how tough it is as a bookmaker and a line maker to set numbers on games. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios you got to go through, Sammy, especially if you look at both the teams playing tonight have games for next week. Their point spreads will be drastically impacted by what happens in their game tonight. And there's a few other teams like the Saints. We weren't sure what to make their number for next week until they clinched the #1 seed. Matt mentioned earlier the Titans-Colts game will likely be flexed to the Sunday night game. You can't really put a number on that game either, though. We don't know what the status is of Marcus Mariota. So there's just a whole lot of variables at play right now, much more so than any other week of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the game at the top, and we can maybe talk about what this number could be or should be, but let's just jump right into it. Cowboys at the Giants, Week 17. What are you guys thinking at the Westgate?
Put up the Giants -6.5. It got bet up to Giants 7 already. You know, Dallas is going to be the number 4 seed in the NFC playoffs. We know that. I don't think their starters will play more than maybe a series or two. The Giants shouldn't want to win, but they've clearly shown the last few weeks that they do want to. So that's why you end up with the Giants being a touchdown favorite, whereas they probably would be somewhere in the neighborhood of a field goal underdog if Dallas was trying in this game.
Yeah, I see the look-ahead line you had at the Westgate was Giants -2.5, and obviously after what happened today, it's got to be a little bit higher. So you think you might see a full 7 here, John?
Yeah, just Dallas has nothing to play for, Matt. They're the number 4 seed. They won the NFC East officially. They hadn't clinched the NFC East until they won today's game. Mm-hmm. There was a chance that they would have gone to next weekend still needing a win to win the division.
Right.
That's no longer the case, and they have nothing to play for next week.
Right, but I think we can assume that when you guys set the advanced line, though, that you were already anticipating that they would clinch.
Yeah,
and that's why the Giants were the -2.5. Otherwise, you would have put up Cowboys.
Yeah, it's kind of a middle ground type number is what we do, Dave, because, yes, you're right. We expected them to beat Tampa Bay, but they were only a 7-point favorite. It wasn't like it was a guaranteed thing.
John, when you put up these look-ahead numbers for Week 17 at the Westgate, I assume you have lower limits on these type of numbers, correct?
Yeah, the early lines are always 3,000. So if you want to bet those look-ahead numbers, we put them up every Tuesday, and we take a limit of 3 dimes on them over the counter.
And you even will take the same limits on the Week 17 look-aheads?
Yeah, it's the same limit all year long.
Okay.
A lot of money for a game.
Matt, you don't agree with that decision, Matt?
I think it's riskier on your part, don't you?
But I would agree, I would argue that it's just as risky for the player.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the player doesn't have any information about how the Week 16 games are going to go that we don't have.
Let's move to the Raiders and the Chiefs. And, of course, Chiefs will play Sunday night. Raiders will play Monday night. What's the number here? Game is in Arrowhead.
Well, this game's off the board. If Kansas City wins tonight, they clinch the number 1 seed. If they lose tonight, they'll need a win on Sunday to get that 1 seed. They'll probably be somewhere like a 16-point favorite, Sam. I mean, they would demolish the Raiders if they needed to. If they needed to win to get that 1st seed.
Mm-hmm. The Raiders, I think, are actually going to play Monday night like it's their last game of the season. Christmas Eve at home against the Broncos. I really think that's, even I read John Gruden's quote yesterday. He said, it's the end of the season, Christmas Eve. I don't think the Raiders have any interest in playing Week 17 in Kansas City. They're going to put everything into tomorrow night's game against the Broncos, so I could see that number being pretty big. John, we were talking about limits in Week 17. I'm curious, when you look at a game like the Cowboys-Giants we talked about, your look-ahead number was 2.5 on that. Why, when you say it's as risky for the book as a player, I understand that concept, but that number looks a little bit low to me. If you assume that the Cowboys are going to win and have the division locked up, you would automatically think that number is going to be higher than 2.5. It would be more than a field goal, so you'd want to lay that 2.5 with the Giants, right?
I think also today the Giants played a lot better than we expected them to. Don't forget about that. The Giants came into this week as a 9.5-point underdog. They probably should have won today against Indianapolis.
Right.
All signs are pointing towards the Giants are clearly trying down the stretch. So we learned a lot. We learned something about the Giants today, and we learned something about Dallas. That's why you see that number move up. We actually moved it up 4 points. We took some money that moved it up to 7.
Is that right? Okay. The Giants are actually 7-0 against the spread on the road since failing to cover in Dallas in the season's first week. They have been much better on the road than at home. And, John, I dare say, did the Giants find their franchise, their future quarterback today in Eli Manning? Just kidding.
Their future, maybe their quarterback in 2022 could be Eli Manning, you think?
I don't know. I've heard a lot of speculation out of New York that the Giants are actually going to stick with this guy as their quarterback next year. Yeah.
I've read the same things, and the Giants have so much talent offensively. Barkley is such a great player. Beckham, Engram, Shepard. I just think they need a new signal caller, and their offense could really take off. But I've read the same things as you. It sounds like they're going to go with Manning again next season. So really, they don't there's nothing in it for them to lose next week.
Right.
It's not like they're looking for a quarterback in the draft. So certainly the Giants will be all in next week, and that's why you see such a high number.
Dave, how much is your volume usually? How much volume do you usually have on a Week 17 Sunday? Because we know you're a dog player; it's no secret. You talk about it all the time. But there are a lot of dogs on this sheet that are dead. I mean, they're either not trying to play or they're not going to go to the playoffs. How does your volume usually compare Week 17 to an average week in the NFL?
I'll usually have a lot fewer plays, or at least a lot fewer opinion plays, where I really feel a dog is live. Again, it might be a case of playing the market and teasing some games into position, but again, we're really gonna have to wait and see. Again, a lot of news about players are going to be sitting out through the course of the week here, so I'm interested to hear more lines.
John, we're looking at the Saints here, Week 17. They're going to be at home against Carolina, and they have the 1 seed right now, 13-2, and they've already beaten the Rams. So how tough is it to make this number against Carolina without Cam Newton?
Yeah, we don't have a number up for this for the reasons you just mentioned. Plus, Carolina's quarterback, I think he also broke his arm today, the kid they had in there for Cam Newton. Or he looked like he was playing hurt against Atlanta today. So we don't know who's going to be a quarterback for Carolina. The Saints have nothing to play for, so right now we do not have a number up for this game.
How about the Patriots and the Jets?
The Patriots can still get a first-round bye by winning next week. We got the Patriots as a 13-point favorite against the New York Jets. The Jets, the team that I don't think has any interest in winning, guys. I think we saw that today.
That's a big number, 13. The Patriots have not been good against the number this year. 8-7 covering spreads. Usually they're much better than that.
Actually,
10-5
if you watch today's game closely, and John and Dave, I'm not sure how closely you watched it, the Buffalo Bills had a lot of opportunities in that game, a couple drop passes. I thought the Patriots were really fortunate. The 24-12, the Bills score late. It looks like it was a blowout. The Bills were actually in that game. I don't think this Patriots team, John, I agree with your opinion from recent weeks. This Patriots team's just not that good, man.
I just don't think the Patriots have a lot of talent, Matt. I've been saying that pretty much all season. I don't think they have anywhere near the kind of talent on their roster that we see with the Chargers or the Chiefs or even the Steelers, I think, have much more talent than New England does. New England benefits from playing in a terrible division,
right?
And they have a terrific coach in Bill Belichick. Some of the mistakes he's made this season, I'll set those aside. He's still a great coach. But I really don't think New England's roster talent is that good. And I saw what you saw in that Buffalo game. That game was not as one-sided as the score indicates.
Yeah.
Eagles are still alive, gentlemen, and they're going to hit the road. They're going to face the Redskins out east. I would guess this number would be close to a touchdown, John.
Yeah, the Eagles a 7.5-point favorite here, Sammy. Quite a win today over Houston. Ed Salmon's jumping up and down in his Nick Foles authentic jersey. Ed was thrilled with that win to keep his beloved Eagles in the playoff race. Eagles win, Vikings lose next weekend, and Philadelphia is back in the postseason. That would be very welcome news here for the bottom line at the Superbook.
Interesting, because, John, you're a Redskins guy, and Ed's a Eagles guy, obviously an Eagles super fan.
Right.
7.5. What do you think the Redskins show up with next week? Do they care about playing the spoiler role? They were in that game yesterday against the Titans. You can make an argument they have outplayed the Titans for, most of that game. What do they show up with in Week 17? And does playing the spoiler role actually motivate a team like the Redskins at this point?
It's hard to say because I really think they threw the kitchen sink at both Jacksonville and Tennessee, Matt.
Right.
And I've gone to a lot of Redskin games over the years. That stadium will probably be at least 50% Eagles fans next Sunday, knowing the way they travel. I don't know what the Redskins are going to have left. I feel like the Redskins coaching staff got as much as they could out of that team with all of those injuries. I think the Eagles should be able to win this game pretty easily and put some pressure on the Vikings.
What about you, Dave? Eagles at the Redskins. Any thoughts?
This is the first dog I like on the card. Again, 7 in the hook is something I certainly like as well. Advanced line was 5.5. I certainly understand the move, but like Matt was saying, I thought they acquitted themselves very well against the Titans on Saturday. They're not lighting up the scoreboard or anything, but I think the defense is playing well enough. I think they can be competitive and stay within a score.
Hey, folks, when Tuley talks, listen, because he's off maybe his best week of the NFL season. Did you catch that?
That's what I heard. A little humble brag, a little humble.
Yeah.
week 16 it took long enough.
I'm happy for you, Dave.
For all the backdoor covers. It was crazy. There was like a 15-minute stretch there where I couldn't believe everything I was praying for was coming in. So
did you have the Bengals?
My Christmas bonus.
I love how Murray says, I don't think the Redskins are going to show up at all. And Dave's like, I like the Redskins.
Dave had that no sweat cover with the Bengals today. Now he's full of confidence.
All right.
I like the Jets today, guys. Don't listen to me.
Remember this morning I said I loved the Bengals.
Yep.
I mean, that was a lucky cover.
It was a rocking chair.
That critical that critical field goal, Sam, that cut it to 23-3. That really played into that final score, though.
I'm glad they got
crucial
it now.
kick there to cut it to a 3-possession game.
You got to get it to 23-3, John. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Last game here, first segment, opening line show on VSiN. Lions and Packers. I have nowhere. I don't even know where to start with this one.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, or actually a lot, and basically the consensus in the room was Detroit quit in the second half of that game today against Minnesota. We don't have any reason to think they're going to show up next week. Made Green Bay a 7.5-point favorite. They're playing Aaron Rodgers for some reason. Aaron Rodgers gets credited for touchdowns when he doesn't cross the goal line for some reason. So you got to favor Green Bay here, Sammy.
7.5 Youmans.
I'm still baffled by that. We've talked about 3 times now in the opening segment of the show, but if you watch the replay, Aaron Rodgers, that ball was not close to crossing the plane, and that's quickly confirmed as a touchdown. It's just it's something I think the NFL has to answer to. This is ridiculous when things like this happen.
Tougher and tougher to watch the sport every single week.
John's joking about it. Matt. He says, Rodgers credited for touchdowns he didn't score, but it's true. He was given a touchdown when he did not cross. Yeah, go ahead.
Green Bay's been getting a favorable whistle since I started watching the NFL.
Yeah.
They're the Green Bay Packers, man. Everybody knows that.
Those are the breaks you get. All right. Dave Tuley, John Murray live at the Westgate. Matt Youmans, Sam Panayotovich here at the South Point. We'll come back, look at more games, Week 17 when we come back on VSiN.
This is the Opening Lines Show, the first look at next week's pro football lines. You can listen to us on SiriusXM Channel 204, watch us online at VSiN.com, and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches, and we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
Welcome back we give you the information to get the jump on next week's pro football games. Right now on The Opening Lines Show.
We continue here, The Opening Line Show. Matt Youmans, Sam Panayotovich here at the South Point. Live at the Westgate, Dave Tuley and John Murray. And guys, segment 2 begins with a game in the AFC South. I thought there would be more playoff implications for Jacksonville at this point in the season, but that certainly has not been the case. They have sputtered to an awful 5-10 record, and they hit the road to face the Tuley Texans. Johnny, what's the number on this one? Houston at home.
We had Houston -7, Sammy. They're up to 7.5. Houston needs this win to secure the AFC South. You know what's interesting, guys? I don't know if you've ever heard me say this, but I've been saying that kicking is for losers for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Colts had just punted in overtime against Houston, they'd be tied right now with the Texans for first place in the AFC South.
No doubt. We've talked about that. What a turning point that was for the Texans, too. They won that game, and they went on to win 9 straight. They were 0-3 at the time. And the Colts, after that 1-5 start, have really turned things around. Man, it's amazing if you think about how the Colts have turned things around after being 1-5. But you're right, John. Frank Reich at that point just said, the hell with it. I'm going to gamble. I'm going to go for it here and be bold. It backfires, and it could really backfire at the end of the season. But I think what it comes down to, if you're the Colts, you have to be able to accept your fate in this situation. If somebody told you when you're 1-5, all you have to do is win a game in Tennessee and you're in the playoffs, you would take that at that point. So if you can't beat the Titans, I'll say you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So the Colts know exactly what they have to do to get in. And Andrew Luck should have a lot of confidence. Dave, he is 10-0 against the Titans.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that good, but yeah, I know I've been burned trying to fade him over the years.
Let's look at the Browns and the Ravens. Of course, the Ravens right now sitting on the 4 line in the AFC. Chiefs 1, Patriots 2, Texans 3, Ravens are 4. And we saw yesterday before that game started that there were reports that they may extend John Harbaugh, which I think would be the right move. Baltimore is going to be favored here against the Browns here, John.
Sammy, if the Ravens hadn't extended John Harbaugh, how fast would he have gotten scooped up on the open market?
Green Bay, Cleveland, anybody.
Yeah, that story was ridiculous. The Ravens is a 6.5-point favorite against Cleveland. Ravens win this game. They win the AFC North. They get a home playoff game. Harbaugh's done a remarkable job this season building that offense around Lamar Jackson, the rookie quarterback, and certainly the Baltimore's defense, you have to say, is the best in the NFL. It's going to be a great test for Baker Mayfield and my Brownies. But, the Brownies are going to go in there with absolutely nothing to lose. They're dangerous.
Browns are dangerous. I agree with what he said there. So the Ravens, that's not going to be a cakewalk game for the Ravens. And I think you're going to find a lot of people who jump on the Browns. That was, if you look at it today, yeah, it turned into an 8-point final, but they were up 23-0, dominating the Bengals in this spot. And 6 seems like a lot of points, Dave. I know you love ugly dogs. The Browns are no longer ugly dogs like they were in recent years. +6 here against the Ravens team. Don't forget, it's still Lamar Jackson at quarterback, and they're not putting a lot of points up offensively. If you look at the points that the Ravens have put on the board, their defense has a lot to do with it. And you can't count on Lamar Jackson to light up the scoreboard. So, Dave, I think it's tough to lay a number like 6 with the Ravens. Baker Mayfield's playing at a high level. Is this a dog you think you might have some interest in this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, hoping it climbs more. And if you remember, it was only like 7 hours ago this morning, but you and I were talking with Matthew Holt about how sometimes it seems like the sharps you think are going to be on one side, and they don't wait until let the public bet at the high number as high as he can go. So hopefully there's a call out to all the sharps out there. Do not bet the Browns early. Let it get to 7, please.
Ravens still number 1.
You can't call the sharps off the Browns. I'm sorry, Sam.
No,
you can't talk the sharps out of betting on the Browns.
I'm telling them to wait. They're going to get a better number if they just wait.
Browns are going to get, you'll probably get 7 on this game, but the Ravens still number 1 scoring defense in football, 17.5 points per game. Titans are 2 and the Bears are 3. Defense is going to win for Baltimore. I like Baltimore a whole lot in this spot. How about the Falcons and the Bucks? Johnny, who's favored here? Game is in Tampa.
We made it Falcons -2.5. I'm not going to tell you guys there was a whole lot of conversation about this game. Neither team has anything to play for. Atlanta, a good win today against Carolina. The Buccaneers actually shows a little bit of life on the road in Dallas. This should be a forgettable game, gentlemen.
Yes, I agree with that. And I think if you put the number at 3, you would probably have some nibbles on the dog at +3, just simply by the fact of, hey, this looks like a toss-up game, and if I can grab +3, I would take it. I really have no other way to analyze a game like Falcons-Bucks, because you say Jameis Winston might be, fighting for his future as starting quarterback of the Bucks or whatever. I think you're just kind of manufacturing motivational angles to try to talk yourself into a bet. Dave?
I think the way to play this might be a teaser again. Take the Bucks up to +8.5 because, it should come down to 1 score.
A lot of people will be sweating on Sunday. The Buffalo Bills with the win total on the line, right? Bills have 5 wins, and I know they're going to be favored here against a Dolphins team that can't do anything, Murray, on the road.
Yeah, Miami's been terrible on the road this year, Sam. They were terrible today at home, losing to Jacksonville. Buffalo, a 3.5-point favorite at home in this game. Says a lot about the Dolphins season, but you got to give a lot of credit to the Bills. They're certainly an overachieving team without question.
And this is a big game. Actually, I bet the Bills win total under 6. So I'll root against them here. But you know what? I love them in the spot this week. Dolphins had the wind knocked out of them today. They go up to cold weather. Buffalo. The Bills' defense has actually been outstanding recently, and I think Josh Allen's playing better than some people give him credit for. I like the Bills a lot in this spot. I was hoping the number would open 2.5, or 3, because I thought you got to lay that. I like the Bills here.
Last one, first half of the show, opening line show on VSiN. The Colts and the Titans. Game is in Nashville, and we expect it could be flexed up to Sunday Night Football. What could this number be, Mr. Murray?
I think it will be the Sunday night game. I think that makes the most sense. It's a game where both teams are going to be trying. I think you're probably looking at the Colts as a 3-point favorite if there's no Mariota, and more like a pick'em if Mariota does play. Should be a very good game, likely deciding the number 6 seed in the AFC playoffs.
Yeah, Colts on the 6 line, Titans on the 7 line. Dave, where do you start with this one?
I would look to take the Titans if they're an underdog. Again, we'll wait to see where this one lands. This might be another teaser with the Bucks if it's Colts -2.5.
Yeah, I think if you put this number at 2.5 and there's no Mariota, you're going to be heavy action on the Colts in this spot. The more people look at these two teams this week, they're just going to have a lot more faith in the Colts and Andrew Luck, and look at his history against the Titans in the first meeting between these teams this season, which I don't think means a lot at this point. But, John, if you go back, I'm sure you guys did, you go back and look at the first meeting, the Colts pounded the Titans 38-10. That was a game which the Titans defensive coordinator, Dean Pease, had to be wheeled out of the press box. He got sick during the game. Mike Vrabel took over the play calling. The Titans were a train wreck that day, but they were pounded by the Colts 38-10. And I don't think there are going to be a lot of people anxious to jump on their, excited to jump on the Titans side here. I really believe the Colts are becoming much more of a public team. Is that accurate?
I think that's fair, and especially the public. Most of the public watched the Titans yesterday. Mm-hmm. They were very unimpressive, eked out that win over the Redskins and Josh Johnson. Although the Colts looked pretty poor defensively today, Matt. The Giants are really able to move the ball up and down the field against Indianapolis. So I do think there will be some support for the Titans, but the public is definitely going to be on the Colts, especially if there's no Mariota.
That's John Murray, Dave Tuley, live at the Westgate. We're Matt and Sam. We're coming back. We got 5 more games in Week 17, and we have to line, and then college later on in the show here on VSiN.
This is the Opening Lines Show, the first look at next week's pro football lines. You can listen to us on SiriusXM Channel 204, watch us online at VSiN.com, and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel, or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches, and we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
Welcome back. We give you the information to get the jump on next week's pro football games, right now on the Opening Lines Show.
Halfway home here on the Opening Line Show on VSiN. Matt Youmans, Sam Panayotovich live at the Westgate, John Murray and Dave Tuley. Guys, we pick it back up with the Bengals and the Steelers. The game is in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh has some work to do if they want to climb back into this postseason.
Need
John.
some help, too.
Yep.
Yeah, the Steelers need a win, and they need help as well from the Cleveland Browns. Got them as a 2-touchdown favorite in this game. Bengals don't have anything on the line. Steelers should win. Will they get the help is the question, Sammy.
That is a big question, and I think you can pretty much assume the Steelers are going to get the win against this weak opponent that seems to have packed it in here.
15.5 right now at the Westgate. Already moving out.
That's a big number. I'm not
jumping.
I'm not interested in playing something like this. Dave, would you take the dog? I know you love the Bengals. Would you take the dog?
I love the at least I did today, but I mean, yeah, I like to hear that it's already 15.5. Will we see 17? Maybe. I think I would probably be on the Bengals at 17, maybe even at 16.
Yeah, they were down 23-0 against Cleveland, so anything's really possible here. I wouldn't be surprised if we got to 17. What about you, John? How high can it go?
Not impossible, but the Sharps love to take those huge dogs, Sammy. There'd be some resistance at 17.
Yeah.
This one I think is the toughest one to make because there are so many unknowns with Chicago, and obviously the Saints have home field in the NFC. The Rams on the 2-line, Bears on the 3-line. You even said last week when you were making these lines, this one's tough to make. Minnesota at home against Chicago.
Yeah, and I was just looking at my phone because right when I walked out to do the show, we were discussing what we thought we were going to make it. We were talking 5.5. Looks like they got Vikings 6.5 up right now. The Bears can still get a bye, but they need the Rams to lose in the afternoon. It's very unlikely that that'll happen. So, and I think if the Bears fall behind early in the game, they'll bring it in and get ready for the next week's game.
You know what's interesting about this game, too, is that Sean McVay likes to rest guys late. Todd Gurley did not play today, and obviously there's a chance McVay could sit Gurley and some other guys this week. Would he do that, Sam? I was listening to the Rams radio broadcast this afternoon. They were speculating who McVay might set in Week 17. But if you need that win to get that number 2 spot and the bye, you can't set too many guys.
You don't want to go to Chicago again. You don't want to go to Chicago in January.
No, you don't want to go to New Orleans either. Huh?
Matt, the Rams will know by the time their game starts if they need to win or not.
Rams game scheduled at 1:25, right?
Yeah, Bears-Vikings is at 10
Bears-Vikings early, so
the Rams will know if they need a W before their game kicks. So I think the Rams are in an easier position, whereas Matt Nagy, he's got to kind of balance it. I mean, obviously the difference between the 2 and the 3 seed is huge, but he has to think the Rams are going to beat the 49ers if they need to in the afternoon.
How about the Bears this year, too, Youmans? The best cover team in the league, 11-4 this year. Best cover team, and the only team that's even in the ballpark, New Orleans, 10-5 ATS. But the Bears have covered a lot.
Bears been great. They were fortunate to cover today. Got a interception in the red zone, up 5 late in the game, preserves the cover, but that's the way it goes. John, I don't know if the schedule's going to – the times are going to stick. The sheet I'm looking at here has 12 morning games, 3 afternoon games, and 1 night game. Is that the way you guys see it's going to happen next week with the 3 afternoon games being Chargers, Broncos? No? Okay.
I think they'll flex some more games to the afternoon. I think they'll try to balance it out a little bit more, maybe like 11-5, something like that.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that Bears-Vikings game. Again, just with that seeding question, that is a game historically they have moved to the same time, so you don't have the case where one team has to play early, not knowing what the other one's doing.
Dave, that's the exact point I was thinking when we were talking about that game. How can you not schedule those 2 games at the same time?
Right.
It's a big advantage for the Rams if they don't, man.
Well, you said, John, that the Rams would know the result of that game and what they had to do by the time they kicked off.
According to the schedule that I have in front of me, I don't know what the NFL is planning on doing.
I would think the NFL would have to schedule those games at the same time. That's
I would think so,
fair
too.
way to do it.
Yeah,
right?
because you can't have the Rams just waiting back and seeing, what Chicago does. Back to the task at hand, though, Tuley. If I were to give you a 6.5 or 7 with Chicago here, would you think about it?
Would think about it, but again, the time is really a huge part of that handicap.
Yep.
And with the Rams time. So, I mean, all things being equal, if it is the early game, I would think. I think it was Matt said earlier that the Bears might try early, and then if they fall behind, they might start deciding to sit people, figuring the odds are against them.
Chargers hit the road. They'll face the Broncos at Mile High. This one could be 6. I'm going to guess 6 or maybe 7 on the Chargers, laying that on the road, John.
Well, this is another game where we need to see what happens tonight. If Kansas City beats Seattle, Kansas City is the 1 seed. The Chargers are the 5 seed. This game is meaningless. If Seattle wins, then Kansas City would need to beat the Raiders next week to be the 1 seed. And if Matt's right, and I think he probably is, they would need to put that game at the same time as the Chargers-Broncos game. They would need to move the Chiefs-Raiders game to the afternoon as well. So it's really, there's so many variables here. It's very hard to tell what this number is going to be, Sam.
Yeah, you guys have that one off the board. You also have Arizona-Seattle off the board because, hey, we have to wait and play out Sunday Night Football, right?
You do.
Yeah, Seattle, if they win this game, they're in the playoffs. They have nothing at stake next week. I don't know what the Cardinals are doing if they're still an NFL franchise. But yeah, I mean, you can't really make a number. Well, obviously, we would never have a number up while the team's playing on Sunday Night Football. But it's very hard to even speculate on what the number is going to be.
Yeah, can't speculate. But let's say the Chiefs lose on Sunday night, and the Raiders put everything into that Christmas Eve game like we think they will.
Oh, yeah.
Everything into the Monday night game at the Black Hole, beat the Broncos. I think they'll show up with nothing in Kansas City in Week 17. And if the Chiefs need that game, John, this number would probably be 17. Is it fair to speculate it could be 17?
I think I said earlier in the show 16. I think you might be right, Matt, especially in the scenario you just gave out where the Raiders win their final home game in the Coliseum and they have nothing to play for next week. And then I think the numbers that Sammy threw out sounded about right for the Chargers. If we assume the Chargers are going to try, probably be a 6.5, 7-point favorite. But there's just so many things we need to find out before we can line that game. Right. We need to see if the Chiefs win tonight, and we need to see if they make next week's Chiefs game at the same time as next week's Chargers game.
You do have a line on this last game. Last game to touch on here, Week 17. It's the opening line show on VSiN. We've got the 49ers on the road to take on the Rams in the Coliseum, and I know the Rams are favored, but by how much?
Another tricky one again. It goes back to, will they put the Bears game at the same time? We have 9.5 up there now. If they're at the same time, you might see the number go up a little bit. I think that 9.5 is more of a middle ground number where you assume maybe the Bears might lose. I think if the Rams are going all out, the number is over 10 in that game.
There's not a whole lot to add there. I think he analyzed it. As a bookmaker, there's a lot of things you have to, a lot of variables. Like he said, that was a word that you have to figure out before you can line some of these games. And it's complicated. I think, it's equally risky for bettors and bookmakers in Week 17. But Chris Andrews at the South Point was telling me earlier today, John, that he thinks sometimes the players find out stuff before the bookmakers do, and that's one reason he hates week 17. Do you hate week 17, or do you find it challenging, or are you really indifferent as far as week 17 as compared to the other 16 weeks?
I think it's the week where you need to be the most cautious, Matt. I wouldn't say I hate it, but it's definitely challenging, and Chris Andrews is right on the money. That's why you see books not putting up lines like the Green Bay New York game or the Carolina Atlanta game this week until they saw who the quarterback was going to be. Because you always find out these bettors, they know somebody's in their ear, and somebody gets that information early.
Yeah, the Rams did cover today. That was the first time they had covered in a while, and they were on a 2-9 slide against the number. They were 2-9 in their last 11 at covering.
Yeah.
But
Sammy, how much did the Rams miss Todd Gurley today? I think they picked up a running back off the street, and the guy ran for about 150 yards.
31-9 is that final, so the Rams do get right, and it's tough not to against the Cardinals, who we've all talked about for weeks. They're just a joke right now, and their coach is so overmatched in every game. But I am impressed, guys, with what Kyle Shanahan has done. I mean, he's on his third quarterback. He's on backup running backs and receivers, and they're in a lot of these games, guys, including the game today. They could have won. They could have covered.
Yeah, Nick Mullins should have ran for that fourth down, gentlemen. He threw the ball down the sideline looking for the home run TD. He had the first down. It was right there for him. It looked like he could have easily picked up that first down and got out of bounds on what I believe was a 4th and 4.
He could have carried a suitcase and made the first down.
Yeah.
That's how much space he had there to get it. That's just an inexperienced quarterback. You know, instead of picking up the first down, keeping the game alive, he throws the ball out of bounds, deep out of bounds. Horrible play, but that's an inexperienced quarterback. I think Nick Mullins has played pretty well in spots. If you remember this game last year, the 49ers blew out the Rams when Sean McVay set his starters, and the 49ers really poured it on, and I think McVay was ticked at Kyle Shanahan for that. I don't think we'll see that scenario this year, right?
Yeah, they're saying 9.5 right now at the Westgate, and Johnny says if they need the game, could be even higher. And, of course, we'll wait and see how the whole scheduling situation plays out. The fact that you have the Rams and the Bears at different times, don't think that's exactly fair. We're talking about integrity. I don't think there's very much integrity there when you play the later team. The Rams, you don't want the Rams to just be able to sit back and watch.
34-13, that was the score last year in L.A., Week 17, when the Rams went there and 49ers went there and pounded a Rams team that was resting starters.
We'll come back.
Big line move in that game, Matt, too, especially. And, you guys asked earlier about how hard it is to set these lines tonight. That was a great example of that, Matt. That number moved a ton as it became clear later in the week that the Rams weren't going to try in that game.
Yep.
Got some bowl game to discuss. Dave and John, Matt and Sam will come back on the Opening Line Show after this.
This is the Opening Line Show, the first look at next week's pro football lines. You can listen to us on SiriusXM Channel 204, watch us online at VSiN.com, and follow us on Twitter at VSiNLive.
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches, and we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
Welcome back. We give you the information to get the jump on next week's pro football games. Right now on the Opening Lines Show.
Still a long way to go for bowl season here, and you should be prepared with the second annual VSiN Bowl Guide. All the stats, trends, analysis, best bets, power ratings, and breakdowns for every single game on the slate. And this goes into January. No secret there. You should be ready. Best bets from Matt Youmans and Dave Tuley, too. Right now, $19.99. Second annual VSiN Bowl Guide available now. VSiN.com/Bowl Guide.
We have best bets from a panel of 10 experts at VSiN. And we also have Brent Musburger picking the side and total for every bowl game, and he's off to a pretty good start.
Yes, he is. All right, let's go to the college slate here, and we'll look at a game on Friday, December 28th. Dave and John, Matt and Sam, opening line show on VSiN. We've got Purdue and Auburn in the Music City Bowl. Not much movement here. You're looking at Auburn, about a 4-point favorite, John. There have been some groups that like Purdue. I know that. Some shops have 3.5, but consensus line here in Vegas, Auburn -4. Game is in Nashville.
Yeah, a tough game to handicap, really, Sammy, because I've seen some sharp groups on Auburn as well. So this is one of those bowl games where there's been sharp money coming in on both sides. It's a tough one to pick here. I'll leave it to Dave to make the selection.
I haven't bet it myself. I'm in a ton of pools this bowl season, and in most of the straight up pools, I almost have Auburn in all of them, and then. But the ATS, I probably got like 2/3 of them on Purdue. Plus, in my pools, it ranges +3.5, +4.5.
Yeah, I like the Big Ten dog a little bit here. Jeff Brom coming back. He turned down the Louisville job. I think the team's going to be highly motivated to play for him since he stayed. We know Brom is creative. He's innovative offensively. I think he's going to go deep into his playbook. You're going to see some trick plays. Purdue should be the team that plays with more energy. On the flip side, I'm not sure Auburn's going to lay down. The Tigers last year really heard that for a year, right? How they got whipped by Central Florida in that bowl. And Gus Malzahn's got a poor bowl record. He's kind of on thin ice, so I think he's going to coach a little bit harder in this bowl game than maybe he has in the past. You've got a quarterback in Jarrett Stidham who thinks this is maybe his audition for the NFL draft. He is declared for the draft. Interesting game here. It's always hard to handicap. You're speculating a little bit in the motivational factors, but I think a few more signs maybe point to Purdue plus the points.
Yeah, if you line these two up, week one, neutral field, Auburn would be an 8 or a 9-point favorite.
Yeah, but obviously Auburn's been a big disappointment.
7-5 this year, and I said this earlier when the schedule came out. If you would have told the Auburn fan base before the season, hey, you're going to be in the Music City Bowl, what do you think the reaction would have been? People would have been calling for Malzahn's job.
Well, he just got a contract extension. I'm not sure why, but he did.
Let's go to the Camping World Bowl. Johnny, talk some sense into us here. West Virginia is now the dog. I see Cuse -1 at a couple shops. Can the Mountaineers still fight? Can they hang on in this game?
Well, you lose your starting quarterback, starting offensive tackle. You're going to see a big shift in the line. But, I do believe in Dana Holgerson's scheme. It's not going to be as good without Will Grier in there calling the plays, but I think the West Virginia has a little bit of life in this game. Although I am a big fan of Dino Babers and Syracuse as well. They had a very good season. So I can see why there's been so much support for Syracuse with Grier out.
Where did this line peak? Was it 7.5? Was that the highest number out there?
I think 7 was the highest you get on Syracuse. I don't remember seeing a 7.5, Matt. It's certainly possible there was a rogue 7.5 out there. I don't recall that.
And then they also moved it from 7 to 1 when Grier was ruled out. And now you're starting to see the late chasers come in. And, Dave, we're looking at 1.5 now. Cuse -1.5 at the Westgate. Anything in this game?
I'm leaning to the West Virginia side. I thought the the number was adjusted maybe too much. I mean, like John was saying about the system. I mean, we've seen this so many times, especially in college football, where someone great player gets taken out, someone gets put in, and they put up just as good as numbers. So I wouldn't be surprised to see West Virginia put up a good output here. So I'll take them as dog.
Line has moved a lot, Youmans, in the Peach Bowl. This opened up Michigan -6 against Florida, got to 7.5, crossed through the 7. And now I look at the sheet, I see 6.5, and I see a couple 7. So it went through 7 and then came back the other way through 7.
Well, I played Florida plus 7.5, actually, 7.5, and I'm not surprised to see the number drop a little bit. You're seeing a lot of Michigan disinterest in this bowl game. These teams have played each other now 3 times in the past 4 years. You got Rashawn Gary, some other Wolverines who are not going to play in this game. I don't know how Jim Harbaugh gets his team up after you have a 62-point bomb dropped on your head by your rival. You've had a month to recover, but still, how do you get your team up for a game like this against a middle-of-the-pack SEC team? They've already pounded 2 of the past 3 years. I can't see Michigan showing up with a great effort, John. It's speculation, but I can't see it.
I think Michigan definitely thought they were playoff bound going into that Ohio State game, Matt. For sure they did. They thought they were going to beat Ohio State. They were going to win the Big Ten, and they'd probably be playing Alabama on December 29th. So it is going to be tough for them to get up for this game. Rashawn Gary and Devin Bush are both sitting this game out. Yep. Likely first-round draft choices. I see what you're saying. I do think Michigan has much more talent than Florida, even without those 2 guys in there. But I know what you mean about the motivation. It's hard to believe Michigan's going to be motivated for the Peach Bowl.
Cotton Bowl, Clemson opened up -11 or 11.5, depending on your shop. And now we're seeing 13s, 13.5 at the Golden Nugget, and the total about 55.5 or 56. Dave, I'm on the Irish here. What about you?
Yeah, me too. I think we've talked about this every week since the lines came out. That, I like the Irish. I've been waiting to see if it would go up at first. I mean, it really held steady for a while. But, glad to see it's up to plus 13 now. I think they can definitely give them a game.
Interesting. Well, I've listened to analysts I respect who cover college football, and I heard one this week say, this is going to be a complete blowout. There's no way Notre Dame can hang. Notre Dame's a fraud. And the other one said, Notre Dame's a lot better than people think. The Irish are going to give the Tigers a fight. So
went out right.
I think, John, as a bookmaker, you got to see strong two-way action in this game. Is that right?
Seen a lot of sharp bets on Clemson, Matt. That's what pushed the number up to 13. Where you're seeing a lot of money on Notre Dame, and this is not going to surprise anybody, is the money line. We had a guy bet 10,000 on Notre Dame money line at 4-1, knocked it down a little bit. All the money line tickets are coming in on the Irish, just like they're all coming in on Oklahoma in the other semifinal game. So I think the books are going to actually need those 2 favorites to win outright.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked about that last week. Yeah, they were plus 425.
Sammy, I think the best thing would be maybe a touchdown win for Clemson.
Yeah, they were plus 425 last week at the Westgate. Now plus 375 on the money line.
Doing a great job of talking over each other.
Yeah, I know.
John,
right?
go ahead and finish. John, you finish.
No, Matt, I'm sorry. Sammy was getting in a good point. I think there will be a lot of money line parlays with Clemson and Alabama guys. So it's not like the books will get crushed if Oklahoma or Notre Dame wins, but all the straight bets are on those 2 underdogs on the money line.
Okay. He's done, Sam.
Okay, he's done. Last game. Got a minute left. Oklahoma and Alabama. And Johnny, we've talked about this for weeks as well, but the move on the total here, you guys had 81 on the total. You now have 77.5. Why do you think that's come down so much?
Yeah, I originally thought it was going to be more like in the mid-70s. I was surprised at how high it opened, and I was surprised at how high it got bet up to. Got as high as, I think, 81.5. It's finally come down to about more like what I thought it should be. But the public is going to come in all over the over as we get closer to Saturday. But 77.5 points is a lot. I know Oklahoma's defense is terrible, but you almost need a touchdown on every possession to get into the low 80s.
That does it for Dave Tuley, John Murray, Sam Panayotovich, Matt Youmans. Gentlemen, always fun. Enjoy your Christmas and happy holidays, guys. Thank you.
Happy holidays, gentlemen.
Yeah.
That does it for us. We'll be back. I don't know if the opening line show is going to have all that much next week, but hey, I guess we'll find out when we do.
We'll be here.
All righty.
All right.
Happy holidays.
This is the Opening Lines Show, the first look at next week's pro football lines. You can listen to us on SiriusXM Channel 204, watch us online at VSiN.com, and follow us on Twitter at VSiN Live. Welcome back. We give you the information to get the jump on next.
The second annual You Gotta Know is the addictive sports trivia game made just for fans of your hometown teams. And it's the perfect $20 gift this holiday season. 500 questions and answers unique to your hometown. Players, coaches, trades, draft picks, ballparks, and arenas, all wrapped up in an attractive tin, decked out in your hometown colors. 22 different editions. 22 You Gotta Know has you covered in cities from Boston to Seattle and everywhere in between. Plus college towns like Ann Arbor, Columbus, and South Bend. 22 versions of You Gotta Know, each for a different sports town and each with 500 questions unique to the teams that you love. Something here for everyone, from the casual fan to the obsessed sports geek. Easy gameplay lets you choose the point values on each card to race to 21 or sit around, drink some beer, and ask the questions to your buddies. Check out the best gift for sports fans this holiday season at YouGottaKnowGames.com, and be sure to enter the promo code VEASAN20 at checkout. VEASAN20, that'll knock 20% off your order. If you've got a
It definitely is harder to handicap a mismatch. I mean, you think about a team like an Alabama playing the Citadel, or a team like that. I mean, what's the difference between 39 and 49 points at the end of the day? Whereas a team that's a lot closer, it's going to come down many times, more than not, to a last-second drive. So those games that are those huge mismatches where it could be anywhere between 30 and 45 or even more points become much more difficult to handicap.
I think when you're handicapping games, I think it's much harder to handicap a mismatch in college football when you've got a smaller school against one of the top major programs, because you don't know what's going to happen many times in the second half. You can have a number up that you think is well, but look at Alabama sometimes. They rest a lot of their players in the second half of a game, or other teams may do the same thing, or you get that big lead and they're just running the ball, or not, I shouldn't say not playing as hard, but they just change the intensity because they're up by so many points and they're running a lot of players in and out. I think it's much more difficult from our side of the counter to handicap a mismatch than a competitive game.
I think it's much harder handicapping a college football mismatch. It's tough to tell if the better team is going to be motivated to play that game, and you get big point spreads, and there's always that backdoor cover. Are they going to blow them out the whole game, or are they going to take it easy because they're looking at the next week? We're a competitive game. Both teams are going into it wanting to win, playing tough. So for me, it's much easier to set a line for a competitive game.
Yeah, mismatch games are always difficult to determine. And a good example of this is the Ohio State Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. Normally a 14-point spread here, you'd say, would favor the underdog. They're more likely to come through the back door than normal. But in a game like this, where Ohio State's going for style points in this game, trying to run up the score, trying to impress the committee, maybe sneak into the playoff, we certainly have to consider these outside factors when we make numbers in games like this that are mismatches, and we have them in a lot of championship games, so we're getting to see them right away this week, not just the bowls, but the conference championship games as well.
/bowl guide, our recent bowl guide.